Okay, so today's class is looking at checking your rotator cuff. It's a really good idea. The shoulder girdle is probably the most complex joint and group of muscles in the body. You could argue ankles as well, but there's less muscles involved. There's 25 muscles that all are active in the shoulder girdle. And if you don't take care of the rotator cuff and it gets out of balance and too tight, then you end up with a frozen shoulder. And I've seen someone this week with a frozen shoulder. And then typically once you get that, it's very hard to resolve, and it takes about 2.5 to 3 years for it to free up on its own. It will free up eventually, but it's a long, slow process. So let's just do a couple of assessments while we're waiting for John. Let's just stand and just move our neck first of all, because when you're talking about the rotator cuff, there's a lot of influence in the neck, either from the neck or up into the neck. It can go both ways. So just see how the neck is feeling. And then just right arm just floating to shoulder height, and then see how you going higher. So you might have full range, but do you notice any stiffness, any impingement, any discomfort in that range? So when I do that, I can definitely feel my deltoids, the muscles around the shoulder. Try the left arm, shoulder height, and then see how you go a little bit higher. It's easier for me on the left, and that's probably because I'm right-handed. So do that a couple of times. Try and pick up where you feel discomfort and whereabouts. For me, I can feel a little bit of tension in my neck because I have left side neck stiffness at the moment. So the other movement that you would try to do is you would just push your hand gently towards the back with the palm facing away from you. That can be quite a difficult movement if you've got the beginnings of rotator cuff imbalance or frozen shoulder. It becomes nearly impossible to do that sort of move. Okay, then we could do a side raise. You could lift the right arm to the side, start to notice my shoulder muscles are quite tight. I've been doing a lot of painting, and anything that's sort of repetitive is going to fire up the triggers in the shoulder muscles. Try the left arm. Again, I've got no stiffness in the shoulder, but I can feel the neck, so I can feel the fascial connection from the arms into the neck. So definitely something going on there. And then the other thing you would try is you would tuck your elbow into your ribs. How does it feel in the shoulder when you bring the arm in contact with the body? So that's an internally rotated humerus, the upper arm bone, or you could try an externally rotated. And for me, there's a definite stiffness on that one. So, you know, a healthy shoulder would go a bit further on here, and maybe I should be a little bit further back on that. And then try the other side. You're coming in, anything, internally rotated shoulder, arm in the shoulder, and then externally rotated. A little bit more range on that side. You can see I'm sort of lining up with the side of the body there, whereas on this side, it's quite a way off on the side of the body. So painting, lots of painting has really tightened up this side of the body. This is a very simple, quick test. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's a regular test that they try to test shoulder mobility. Right hand over to touch the top of the left shoulder blade. That should be a fairly easy, smooth movement. And then take the right arm behind you and see if you could touch the shoulder blade with the right arm. Left shoulder blade, right arm. So you're going up and over, and then you're going behind and up, and you're trying to touch the shoulder blade. So right arm. So see how you go with left arm to right shoulder blade. There's a little bit of tightness on this side. I can feel it in my neck and my shoulder blade muscles. And then see if you can come behind and touch the shoulder blade. So you're going up and over to touch the shoulder blade. A little bit of tightness for me on that one. And then the other one that we all know pretty well is seeing, you know, could you touch your fingers together behind your back? Some people can even hold their hands. And then try it the other way. Can you touch the fingers? Can you hold the hands? So for me, a little bit tighter I can touch, but I'm not quite able to link the fingers. So these are all signs that we're moving into shoulder problems, and we need to sort of keep an eye on our mobility. And when we've got short, tight muscles in the shoulder girdle, you should not stretch. Stretching is only going to cause injury. So these muscles are shortened and tightened, they've locked up. The last thing you want to do is try and stretch them. That's just going to create injury. So the thing you need to do is look at the nervous system, look at vagal releases, and look at trigger point work, and see if you can release those. And then if you do that, then the muscles will go back naturally. Then you start to think about doing stretches and movements. So be very careful about stretching the shoulder when it's really not happy. So let's just start with putting the lower back, the sacrum, on the wall. So in this exercise, the upper body might come forward, but it comes forward with the breath, not just by leaning forward. So keep the sacrum on the wall and come into what's called the goalpost. The goalpost, the elbows need to be level with your shoulders. And then, you know, can you touch the wall? Coming forward. How close to the wall can you get? Now, I've already done this exercise once, so I'm not on the wall, but I'm quite close. When I tried it this morning, I was out here somewhere, and I did it once, and I found a huge improvement. So maybe just by working on the nervous system, bringing the body into more balance, we can already increase the flexibility in the shoulder girdle and those 25 muscles. So we're going to put the right hand on the right side of the rib cage, the low spine, the sacrum on the wall, and we're going to put the left hand in the waist. So we're going to use that breath cycle. Now you can put your hands on the ribs if that helps you to think about expansion, or you can extend the arm. So maybe we'll do the extended arm. So we're going to breathe in for 5, breathe in through the nose and feel the ribs expanding on the right side. Hold the breath for 5. And then blow up the balloon and feel your deep abdominals, your obliques, your psoas, your diaphragm contracting. And it's usually about the breath number 5 that you really notice the tightening on this side. So again, breathe in and reach through the arm. So you're only reaching, it's the breath that brings you forward. Hold the breath. Blow the balloon up. Feel the tightening through the left side abdominal muscles. Breathing in, expanding into the right side for 5. Hold the breath. Blow up the balloon. Let the breath bring you forward. So the breath exhalation brings you into a flexed spine. So again, breathing in and reach. Feel the right side expand and lengthen. Hold the breath. Blow up the balloon. So you're doing it 5 times. Breathing in. Hold the breath. Blow up the balloon. I'm going to do it one more time because I can't remember whether I did it 4 or 5. So breathing in, it might be 6. Expanding. Hold the breath. Blow up the balloon and the low spine is still on the wall. And then drop the hand, the arm, and gently roll up the spine and gently bring your spine out of flexion. Come back into your goalpost again. Elbows level with shoulders, touching the wall, and then coming forward. And now I can touch the wall. I probably need to do it again to get my forearms on the wall, but I've gone from being out here somewhere when I did it first thing this morning. And I did this twice, and now I can touch the wall. So just by working on your nervous system, you can bring balance into the body and stop those compensating muscles, bringing your body, you know, out of a natural alignment. The other thing that's going to make a big difference to your cervical alignment, your thoracic alignment, is the salamander or any of the vagal exercises. So we're going to just hold right hand holding left wrist. Gentle pull on the left wrist. It's very gentle, just so that you can feel the connection through the arm and the shoulder into the neck. right ear to right shoulder. Think of left jaw up to the ceiling until it feels a little bit uncomfortable, and then both eyes looking at right shoulder. So I got a big yawn straight away there, so I'm pretty tight. I've got a pretty stiff neck from painting and doing a few things that I shouldn't have done for too long, like on the computer. And so it's really relaxed that vagal system very quickly for me. So doing the salamander is often the simplest, quickest, safest way to start to balance your neck. Make it a challenge to look at your shoulder, because your eyes will try to move around the room and avoid that strong stretch. Do it for 30 seconds so the neck muscles get a bit of a stretch, and then we're looking up and away. So if a clock was in front of you, you'd be looking at 10 o'clock. And again, you're really concentrating on looking at that 10 o'clock position so that your eyes don't find ways to wriggle out of doing this. And this is a great stretch for the next muscle group we're going to look at, which is the scalenes in the side of the neck. Put another sigh there. So, you know, there's different things going on in this exercise. It's probably, it definitely is one of my favorite releases to get the most benefit in the shortest amount of time. And I've even got the saliva in the mouth, so my vagal system is really trying to balance at the moment. And then just very gently come back into center. 2 circles with the nose. So as I've said many times before, if that's all you do a day, that's a really big help for your neck. So now left hand holding right wrist, and just a gentle tension on that right wrist. Left ear to left shoulder, and feel right side of jaw stretching up to the ceiling. So you're bringing those 2 top vertebrae back and upwards to bring them back up into their correct place. And then you're looking with both eyes at the left shoulder. Again, I got a pretty quick release on this. So as you do these more and more, your body's going to react really quickly. It's going to learn how to balance quicker and quicker. And just gently pulling down on that right wrist, just so you feel the connection through the arm, right the way up to the mastoid process, the bump behind the ear. I've got a swallow there as well. So there's quite a lot going on in my nervous system today. It changes every time you do it, this one, so any of the vagal exercises. So, you know, don't think it's always going to be the same reaction, because it definitely won't be. So it's about 30 seconds, and then you're looking up to what would be a 2 o'clock position on that imaginary clock in front of you. And make sure you focus on keeping both eyes looking at that 2 o'clock. So if you don't concentrate, you'll find yourself looking around the room and looking at other things. It's unusual for the eyes to stay so fixed on one point in a range that is quite, it's on the periphery of what we would find normal. It's quite a strong stretch. You should notice your vision is getting sharper and clearer. There's a nice sigh there, bit of a swallow. So you give it a good 30 seconds, because it's really getting into the muscles in the arms, the shoulders, and into the side of the neck. And then just gently come out of it and just gently release. Do a few shoulder rolls. You know, you could try, if you were doing this at home, you could try your goal post again. So I'm a little bit closer. My forearms are coming closer to the wall. Make sure your elbows are not low, because if your elbows are low, you can easily touch the wall. It's got to be elbows in line with shoulders. So the first muscle group we're going to do is the scaling. So you could come to sitting at this point. I'm just going to show you a picture of blood vessels. So we've got, if you look at the blood vessels, we've got the carotid artery and the jugular vein, and they're right at the sides of the windpipe, you know, the vertebra at the front of the neck and the windpipe. So they run along the groove. But if you come down here, where you can only just see it in the picture, on this side, you can see a collarbone here. There's a little branch, I'll make sure the light's not on it. There's a little branch that comes out from both the carotid artery and the jugular vein that goes right under the collarbone, sort of about midpoint. So anywhere between here and here, you've got blood vessels. There's also going to be nerves in there as well. So it's just good to know your anatomy. And then the scalenes are not flat muscles, they're sort of bands of muscle. So you've got they're coming from the cervical vertebra into the corner of the collarbone, and then this one is coming down. So really they're attaching to the ribs, and this is the collarbone here. So I've got a little, I'll just put these on the floor and I'll sit down. I've got a little bit of a band, and if you were to put the band against the cervical vertebra, one branch of the scalenes goes to the second rib and the other one goes to the first rib. So one comes straight down, so you're sort of looking at the middle of your collarbone, and the other one goes out at an angle slightly. I don't know if you can see that. And they're actually breathing muscles. So they're more involved with breathing. A good way to feel them is if you put your fingers at the side of the neck, turn your head away and find your sternocleidomastoid, and then find that outer border. We're not pressing because that's where those big blood vessels are, the artery and the vein that go up to the brain. But just behind the outer border of the sternocleidomastoid is one branch that comes straight down to the middle of the collarbone, and the other one goes out slightly at an angle. If you were to put your finger there, just very lightly, if you were to sniff through your nose, you can feel the muscles moving under the skin. So you can tell very much they're breathing muscles. So sniffing in through the nose and you'll feel them reacting. So we've split them into 3 zones, and we're going to use 2 fingers, maybe 3, and you're just going to gently rub from front to back. So if this is the muscle, you're just rubbing across the muscle. Now, near the top, so they attach to C1, C2, just at the top, there's usually not too much activity there. So turn your head away, find your sternocleidomastoid, and go just behind it, and just do a little gentle rub. So there's never any downward pressure because we don't want to be pushing into the blood vessels. We don't want to be pressing into nerves. We just want to be stimulating the muscle, and we only do one side at a time, because if we're getting it wrong and we're pressing on those blood vessels, we can affect blood flow to the brain. So we've got the upper zone, and then you come down and there's a middle zone. Again, you turn your head away, find the sternocleidomastoid, and just work from behind that outer border. If you're not sure, do a few sniffs. Now, I found in the middle here, on the one that comes straight down, I found a trigger point here for me. So you could just stay in that place. Often with scalenes, it feels a little bit electrified. It feels very sharp, very edgy. And that's a normal thing, and it's telling you that there is active triggers here. So I'm just gently rubbing, no downward, no inward pressure. I'm just going across. And you do it about 12 times, and then go a little bit further back and see if you can find the other one that comes down a little bit more on a diagonal angle. So again, I will, while you're doing it, I'll just show you the 2 branches. So you've got one that comes straight down, one that goes slightly at a diagonal, and there's even a 3rd branch, which I forgot to mention, that goes under what is your trapezius here. We'll get to that in a minute. So for me, it wasn't the one at the diagonal one, it was the one at the front, and it already feels a bit better. So then come down to just above the collarbone. So here, maybe put one finger and then another finger on top, and just gently rubbing here. And this is where you have to be gentle, because that's where we've got that branch of blood vessels coming out. And we've also got a sort of bundle of nerves that comes under the collarbone into the arm. So we're just gently rubbing, and this is usually the most painful area. So we've got the one that comes straight down. So again, if you turn your head away, find the sternocleidomastoid, you're just outside of that. You'll know without hardly any pressure at all, you'll know if these muscles are unhappy because it will be quite a sharp, uncomfortable sensation. And then move along the collarbone a bit further to that further out diagonal branch. To do about 12 strokes. And this area, little and often, is the way to address it so that you don't aggravate, you don't irritate nerves, you don't aggravate muscles. And then there was that third little branch that went under the trapezius. So if you come to the inner corner of your collarbone, and there's like a little V there, push your finger into the V, and then just lift up your arm, you'll feel the trapezius, that big muscle at the back on the shoulder, jump up. And then with one finger on top of another, just gently pushing underneath. So if this is your trapezius, you're just gently pushing under the trapezius. And be gentle, because again, this muscle group is quite painful. If you feel any hardness through here, what you're feeling is the upper rib and then the second rib. So as you push down into this place, you can feel hardness. That's actually the upper rib. Just move your neck. So little and often. So come to the other side, look to the right, and then just find the outer edge of your sternocleidomastoid, this muscle that comes through here. 2 fingers or 3 fingers, and you're just gently rubbing. I'm going to do it with the same side hand. So like I say, the upper ones generally aren't too bad. They maybe just want a little bit of a rub. So these are breathing muscles, and they're sort of the #1 suspect if you've got shoulder pain. So if you've got shoulder pain, it could be coming from the scalings, pulling the ribs up and then really firing up nerves and muscles into the shoulder. So then turn your head away again, find the outer border of your sternocleidomastoid and come into the middle area and address the one that comes straight down. About 12 strokes. So this side isn't too bad for me. You just do 12, although the longer I do it, the more I can feel something. And suddenly, so you could press, but don't press hard. So if you just want to press, if you feel something pulsing, just move slightly. I've definitely found a trigger there. So it's really good to become expert at this, and then you can just sit there in the evening and just do just a little bit and do it every day maybe. So then we have the second branch, which comes down slightly further back, comes down at a slight angle. So there's something called thoracic outlet syndrome, which is where these muscles shorten and tighten, pull the ribs up, and trap all the nerves and the blood vessels coming down through the neck into the arm and the shoulder. And then you get tingling in the fingers, you get pain in the shoulder, you get chest pain, you get all sorts of things. So, you know, this little muscle group can cause quite a few problems. So then we come down to the collarbone. So if you were to come straight down in the middle of the collarbone, 2 fingers, I'm going to use this hand now, so you should change things as you need to, just gently rubbing. You could put 1 finger on top of another, and then just gently rubbing, and I can feel this is very tight and a little bit sharp, a little bit stingy. So quite often the tension is greatest at the point of attachment. The origin is here, and the attachment is down here. And I can feel it's quite sinewy as well. I can feel the band, the tight bands there. So about 12 strokes and then stop. Then think of the one that's slightly more diagonal that comes down, and just check that. So you're just above the collarbone. You're just feeling around, is anything sore? So it's not downward, inward pressure, it's just gliding across the muscle. So that's going to talk to the nervous system, it's going to stimulate circulation, lymphatic drainage. It's going to stimulate the fascia in this area. And then there was that third little branch that came out. So you go along the collarbone, So you come to the little inner edge of the collarbone, and then you're going to find the trapezius by lifting your arm up, and then just one finger on top, and just gently trying to push the finger into that indentation, but angling more towards going underneath the trapezius. So it can be a little bit nasty and sharp in here as well. So number one culprit might be the scalenes. Okay. A nice stretch for the scalenes is to drop your chin towards your chest, aim your nose towards your right armpit, and then you could just gently put your right hand on your head. You could take your left arm under the chair. You're not pulling with the hand, you're just putting the weight of the hand on your head, and that's usually enough. And just take some deep breaths, because remember this is a breathing exercise, a breathing muscle. And then gently release. So normally you do that for longer, but I'm just keeping an eye on the time. So the other side would be drop the chin, turn towards nose towards left armpit, put left hand on the head, right hand under the chair, and just stay there and just take some breaths. So stretching for the neck, you have to be gentle. You can't force the neck to relax. That's just going to fire up protective mechanisms in the neck, and you're going to make things much, much worse. So I'm coming back to my little list. Pectoral muscles, chest muscles. So if you were to look in the mirror or get someone to look at you from the back, if you can see that your shoulder blades are not lying, so if this is the ribs, your shoulder blades should lie flat on the ribs, or do it this side, flat on the ribs. If you've got tight chest muscles, the edges of your shoulder blade will start to lift away from the ribs, and it's quite easy to see because you'll see that there's a shadow around the shoulder blades, and you can actually stick your fingers under the shoulder blade when they should be flat against the ribs. So that shows you that your chest muscles are too short and tight. They're pulling you into a forward posture, and that's lifting up and causing the scapula to wing. And then that's going to fire up the shoulder girdle and the rotator cuff as well. So an easy way to address the chest would be to get a ball. So we'll just get the free ball, not the ball in the sock. And, you know, we've got the breastbone, we've got the collarbone. For women, we're staying above the bra line. Guys can do the whole chest. And you're just going to use the ball, and you're just going to fan out. And you're just going to explore. Now, the chest triggers can be exquisitely painful. Because we do a lot of manual work, lifting, pushing, pulling, the chest muscles can get super tight, faulty breathing patterns. All these things can fire up the triggers on a constant basis. So we're just massaging the area. It's going to help us to figure out where we've got our painful triggers, and it's also going to just relax the muscles, increase the circulation, stimulate endorphin release, so that brings the pain down. So as the endorphins flood into the area, it calms down the pain receptors in the nervous system. So it's a really good thing to do. There's things, if you know you've got a part of the body that's really, really chronically painful, you could use a wheat bag, or you could use gentle massage before you start, and that will just prepare the area and get that endorphin release. So let's try the other side. So I've definitely got lots of active triggers through here. You're coming under the collarbone, you're coming towards the edge of your armpit. Anywhere at the front border of the armpit, you're going to find active triggers. Anywhere around the breastbone, so on the edges of the breastbone, active triggers. Okay, even the breastbone. So just do the breastbone. The breastbone should have glide. It should, the muscles and the skin above the breastbone should glide across the bone. And we get quite stiff and stuck in this area. And so it's just a good way to keep our breathing a little bit freer. So that's how we would do the preparation. So pectoralis minor, so we've got a small muscle group in the chest that comes down like this, and then we've got the bigger pectoralis major. Pectoralis minor is the first place to look at if you've got winging in the shoulder blade. So we've got the collarbone, you've got the middle of the collarbone, and then we're coming down about 2 to 3 fingers, and just with your ball, one hand on the ball, one hand on the hand, just press, and you've probably found somewhere that's quite painful. So just take some nice deep breaths. Try and aim at pressure that's about 6 out of 10. So don't go above, 7. As you get into 7, your body's already trying to defend and protect itself. So try and aim at a pressure of 6. That's why using a smooth ball is a really good way. So this is actually a trigger point ball. It's smooth, it's got skin texture. It's quite a hard ball. They come in varying softnesses. But anything that's smooth and got a skin texture is usually a really good trigger point ball. And then come down about 2 more fingers. So we've got here and here. And you'll find, so directly below, so one branch of the pectoralis minor attaches to one rib, and then another branch comes to the rib below. So they're in line with each other, but one above the other. And again, I went straight to it. It's so painful. It's easy to find. Maybe while you're doing this, because it is painful, take some nice deep breaths. So the breath is the most dynamic movement in the body. We take about 12,000 breaths a day. So it's the most important movement in the body, and it's the one that we're least aware of because it's a natural thing that we do autonomically. We don't have to think about it, it just happens. But breathing is really important if there's pain. So we'll come to the other side, middle of the collarbone, about 2 fingers or 3 fingers down, under the middle of the collarbone, one hand on the ball, one hand on the hand, and again, just move the ball around, you'll find that trigger. So with pectoral muscles, it might be worse on the right side, but you're going to have it in both because we do generally use both arms, fairly equally. We've all learned to use our left hand to do things as well if we're right-handed. So as I was saying, focus on the breathing because the brain is registering the breath, and if our breathing becomes altered because we're in pain, we're already moving out of that lovely, calm, vagal, parasympathetic state into fight and flight. So we have to be careful about what we're thinking, and we have to watch our breathing. So then come down about 2 fingers down, directly under where you had the ball, and just see if you can find the second one. So definitely found the second one. So when you, the sort of things that, can fire up this is any sort of repetitive movement like sawing, chopping, gardening, typing, all these things, anything where we're working with our arms. And the pain, I'm just looking at my chart here. I've got all my muscle maps. Where's my other one gone? I had another one for the chest, it's disappeared. I've lost it. But, the pain will be in the center of the chest, around the nipple, into the armpit. What did I do with it? Here we go. So yeah, upper, lower chest, shoulder. That was what I was trying to get to, the shoulder as well. So you can get referred pain from the triggers in the chest to the outer edge of the shoulder. So pectoralis major, for women say above the bra line, the cluster is sort of in the middle and around the front of the armpit. So there's some particularly nasty ones, just sort of, if you put your hand in your armpit and then bring your hand out, sort of about here, you'll probably find 1, 2, even 3 really unhappy active triggers. So I found mine. You could do a little bit of torsional release. Make sure it's only 6 because this is not a quick fix for pectoral muscles. You just need to do them regularly if you want them to come down from really, really active to being bearable. And the minute you do something with the arms, you know, you're firing them up again. So they're sort of universal triggers. They're present in everybody. But this one particularly at the front of the armpit, very responsible for referred pain into the shoulder. And there's another one, which is also for the shoulder, which is coming on a diagonal towards the beginning. So you've got the front of the armpit come up diagonally towards the beginning of your collarbone, just outside of your breastbone, and you'll find there's another one there as well. So one here and one here. Okay. And again, this one's uncomfortable too. So we have our satellites and we have our master triggers. It's always best to find the masters because they fire up the satellites and they can switch off the satellites. If you just address the satellite triggers, often the satellite triggers won't calm down because they're being spoken to by the master and the master trigger is firing them up. So you have to go to the source if you can find it. So for me, this is definitely a master. This one was more painful than the one at the armpit. Let's try the other side. If you put your hand in the armpit and then just bring your thumb out to the upper edge of your armpit, around about where your thumb is, you'll find that shoulder trigger. So one hand on the ball, one hand on the hand. Move the ball around. If you didn't find it straight away, then just move the ball around until you do find it. Again, you can add torsional release. If you get the picture through the nervous system of where the pain is going into, that's great. That means you found a master trigger. So always looking for that picture in the brain of the pain pathway, because that gives us a lot of information about what's being affected by the master and whether this is a master or whether it's a satellite. Okay, so definitely this is a master for me, even though I'm right-handed. And then come up diagonally to the beginning of just underneath the collarbone, just outside of the breastbone. So we've got one here and one there. You can see where my fingers are. But again, if you don't find it straight away, just move the ball around. Yeah, there's mine. This one is not as bad as the other one was, so things change according to the body and what's going on and our own story of, you know, what's happening in our body. If it is painful, take a few breaths. Remember the breathing, we've got to breathe in such a way, in a calm, deep breath that talks to the brain and says, okay, this is painful, but it's not dangerous. Otherwise, we're going into fight and flight. We'll start to find our body and our muscles tightening and tensing, and then you're not going to get the release. So we won't do the others, but maybe I will do a chest one sometime, because it's one that I don't tend to focus on. But there's a whole cluster of triggers through pectoralis major. There's triggers on the underside of the chest muscles through here, and there's triggers at the bottom of the rib cage, which are very much affected and connected to the heart and the rhythm of the heart. So that's a whole different lesson, really. So we'll do that another day when we haven't got so much to get through. I'll get rid of those so I'm not being confused on my own notes. So the next one we're going to do is the rotator cuff. There's an acronym for the rotator cuff, which is SITS, sits. So the S is supraspinatus, the I is infraspinatus, the T is teres major, and the S is subscapularis, which is underneath the shoulder blade. So SITS will help you to remember which muscle groups you're going to look at. So supraspinatus, the easy one to find, left hand to right shoulder, find the spine of the shoulder blade, so we can feel that ridge going across, which in the old days we used to think was the top of our shoulder blade, but now we're a little bit more aware of our anatomy. We know that that's about a third of the way down the shoulder blade. And just above the spine, there's a long, thin muscle, which is quite thick and deep near the spine, and then gets thinner and thinner as it reaches towards the point of the shoulder. So where it's really deep at the beginning of the shoulder blade, just above the spine, one finger on top of another finger, and just sort of feel around and find your trigger point. And again, it's almost a universal trigger point for most people. You could use your knobbler if you've got a knobbler. You could use the ball again, and you could press the ball into that spot. You could use the ball in the sock, but I'm going to go to that for the next one. So for me, it's higher up on the curve of the shoulder, and so I actually prefer fingers. So if you're using fingers, put two fingers together so that the finger doesn't get overworked. And, you know, you can just, if it's very painful, you can just go across the trigger, or you can go around the trigger. And again, as you do that, you're really increasing circulation, you're talking to the nervous system to release endorphins into the body, so that it becomes more bearable. So if you're finding it hard to get it down to a 6, just do the gentle massage of going over the trigger point or around the trigger point. So the trigger point, you can feel it because it feels like a knot in the muscle, like a P in the muscle, or maybe it's a taut band. You can just feel that there's a ridge there. There's something in fascial work that they call walking under the skin. And as you're using your fingers, you're feeling with your fingers the tone of the muscle until you get really skilled at feeling where muscle is soft and where muscle is tense. And as you get better at that, added to the pain that you can feel as well, you'll get really, really good at finding these really uncomfortable trigger points in the muscle. And then you work your way down, so we're above the spine of the shoulder blade, and you'll find another trigger. So there's one sort of about here, and there's another one about here, in the muscle. So again, use your trigger point ball or your fingers or the knobbler. So I'm holding the ball on the trigger, and then I'm just pulling down gently on my arm to create a little bit of leverage there. And I'm going to add a little bit of head movement for this one. So it's easy to find the first one because it's big, deep muscle. Here the muscle is thinner. So the rotator cuff is a group of 4 muscles that holds the humerus, the arm bone, in the cup of the shoulder joints. So it's an unusual joint in that the cup is quite shallow, and what holds the arm in the shoulder is the muscles around the shoulder that sort of create a sort of a girdle of muscles that holds the arm bone. What that does is it gives us enormous flexibility and range of motion. But if these muscles get too tight, then they pull on the arm and they can pull the arm bone up. So if this is the cup, this is the arm bone, they pull the arm bone into the cup too much, and then they cause impingement. As you get the impingement, then you get all sorts of problems in the ligaments and the tendons in that area, the bursas, they all fire up, pain receptors go crazy, and then the body sends a response to freeze the shoulder to try and prevent further injury. So if you can relax the muscles, then the humerus drops back into its natural place in the cup, and everything that's holding the arm in position then gets a chance to relax. So it's really good if you can just keep an eye on this muscle group. So go to the other side, so that when you notice things are tight and sore, you just bring them back into calm and relaxed again before you go into the frozen shoulder, because as I say, that can be a sort of 2 to 3 year recovery from that. And the shoulder is so complex that once you get permanent damage and adhesions and capsulitis and a whole load of problems because of a long-term shoulder issue, then you've got scar tissue and it's a longer recovery. So above the spine of the shoulder blade, in the deep muscle above, Press with your fingers, first of all, so you find the tender spot. Use your trigger point if you want to. I'm going to have to hurry up because I've talked too much. I can see the time is slipping away. So then, you know, if there's a trigger point there, you stay there. If you come down a bit, so you've got one about here and one about here. So in the thinner muscle above the spine, just pressing. If you need to use the ball, you could just press the ball into the trigger and you could gently pull on the arm. That's a nice sort of easy way, so the arms don't have to do too much work. So I've pinned the trigger and I've dropped my elbow, and now I'm just gently pulling down on my elbow till I get the right pressure on the ball, if that makes sense. So supraspinatus. Supra means above, spinatus means spine, infraspinatus means below the spine. So we're going to grab the ball in the sock. Now the infraspinatus, if you've got the shoulder blade looks like Africa, you've got the spine that goes across in the upper third. Anywhere in that flat plane below the spine, there's about 4 or 5 trigger points, a cluster of triggers. And so the best way to do the infraspinatus is the ball in the sock against the wall. So you're coming under the spine of the shoulder blade. You're holding the end of the sock. This is a world of pain. I'm laughing, but it's hurting. So things that typically fire up these triggers, one of the worst offenders is phones, computers, anything where we've got our arms in front of us, sort of at elbow, shoulder height, and we're moving our fingers, is going to fire up. So even if you just extend your arm on the side that you've got the ball and just wiggle your fingers, you can feel the activity under the ball. So anything like typing is going to fire up the triggers. Anything, you know, in the garden, anything with arms, anything repetitive. And the problem with this muscle group is once the triggers are fired up, they sort of remember, and then you only have to do that same movement again for a very short time and they'll all fire up again. So again, this is not something that you do once and you walk away. This is something that you would do repetitively. So I can really feel, I found a master here. I can feel it up into my neck, into my upper spine. So like I say, everything above the ribs to the ears is all part of the shoulder girdle, so the neck muscles as well, the chest muscles, the upper back, the arm muscles, the shoulder blades, the shoulder muscles, all part of the shoulder girdle. So you can see how the pain is being referred from the arms into the trigger and from the trigger into the arms. So do the other side. So I'm whizzing through these quickly so that when I'll put this one on YouTube. When you watch it again, you can also stop the video and just take a bit more time. So for me, because I've got an uncomfortable neck on the left side at the moment, this left side is actually a lot more uncomfortable than the right, even though I'm right-handed. So right-handedness is not just a simple explanation because there can be lots of other factors. So my infraspinatus is very unhappy. So you find the spine with your hand going over the top, and then you're on the flat plane of the shoulder blade. Ooh, very painful. Wiggling the fingers. So SITS, supraspinatus, the I is infraspinatus, the T is teres major, teres minor, and the way you find those muscles is they go from so if you've got this, the shoulder blade looks like Africa, they go from the shoulder blade, from the bottom of the shoulder blade and about a quarter of the way up, they go from the shoulder blade to the humerus, the arm bone. So they're in the side of the body. So if you were to just come along the side, you've got your armpit, put your thumb in your armpit, and then spread your fingers out. Sort of where your little finger and your fourth finger are is where they originate and they come up. So if you feel, you can feel there's a muscle that comes up from the shoulder blade towards the arm. So we're not going to press where it attaches to the arm. We're going to press sort of right in the middle between the shoulder blade and the arm. So if you use the ball against the wall, hold the edge of the sock. You can also do this with your roller. That's why I got the roller, is because I thought we'd have time to do it with the roller, but I don't think we do. So if you're doing it at home and you're watching it on YouTube, if you don't find the ball in the sock against the wall a good way to do it, lie on your side and put the roller at the side of the body and just gently roll over the roller, and you'll feel these muscles and their triggers quite quickly and quite easily. And it might be a more comfortable way of doing it. So the ball in the sock is a little bit more targeted and a little bit more aggressive. So again, thumb in the armpit, spread your fingers out, little finger and forefinger, that's the bottom part of your shoulder blade, coming up towards the arm, and you want to be right in the middle, so right on the side of your body. If you feel, you'll feel there's some very tender places there. So just put the ball there, and you'll find them, just move around, you'll find them. So teres major, teres minor. So they're attached to the arm, and then they come down and they attach to the lower part of the shoulder blade to hold the arm in its place. So a small muscle, so it can get quite unhappy, quite fired up, especially if you're doing a lot of arm stuff and heavy work with the arms. They can get really, really uncomfortable, and the trigger's very, very active. Good, so we've got 5 minutes left. So the last one is, so SITS, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres major, minor, and then the final S is for subscapularis. Now, this is usually the most important muscle in the rotator cuff. It's also probably one of the most painful places in the body to go into. So I'm going to put my foot on the floor. If you put your thumb into your armpit and then just drop your arm forward and just rotate your palm in and out, you'll feel a muscle at the back of your armpit. What that is subscapularis, which means underneath the shoulder blade, under scapularis, shoulder blade. So what you're feeling is the deep, so there's a big, deep muscle that completely covers the underside of your shoulder blade. And what you're feeling is the outer border of this very big, deep, strong muscle. So you're holding the edge of the shoulder blade with your fingers, you're gliding your thumb into the space, and you're rotating your palm so you can feel the muscle active. And then you could just squeeze, and you can start low down at the bottom of the shoulder blade, and you can work up. So you're angling towards the low part of the shoulder blade, and then you're coming up a little bit further. So what I'm doing is, it's a sort of a sponge. I'm squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release. There's this muscle, if you've never touched it before, it's going to be very, very painful. And it comes out at the top and it attaches again into the arm. So everything is holding that arm, that humerus, in the cup of the shoulder joint. Okay, so once you've done that a few times, you might notice some parts are more tender and painful than others. So for me, the upper part is really painful, and that is where the trigger points are, is near the top. So you could just squeeze, release. Now this one you've got to be careful of if you've got long nails. It's not going to work if you've got long nails, but you get 3 or 4 fingers and you create a blade, and you can push your fingers underneath. You're rubbing against the ribs, and you're pushing between the ribs and the subscapularis. So you can move your hand to find the muscle, and you're trying to glide. So if this is the muscle, you're trying to glide your fingers under the muscle against the ribs. So again, you can't do this if you've got long nails, and it's uncomfortable it gets easier as the muscle relaxes. And you're just going to go up towards the top of the shoulder blade, so you're going upwards, and then you're going at that angle, and then that angle, and then lower. So let's try the other side before we run out of time. So the thumb in the back of the armpit, right at the back, you're rotating your palm to find the muscle. I'm starting low down at the bottom of my shoulder blade, and I'm sponging. I'm just squeezing. And again, the left side for me is worse. So everything's going on in my left shoulder girdle today. And I'm working, I'm going low, and then I'm gradually coming up in small increments. Once you get better at this, you can, once you know what you're dealing with and what your anatomy is, you could lie on your back in bed, and you could just gently lie in bed, and you could just gently work. So you could be lying flat and gently working into this muscle. It's just in the beginning, it's a muscle that we're not even aware of. So I'm trying to just give you a little bit of anatomy and physiology. And again, as you come towards the top of the shoulder blade, that's where your active triggers are, and that's where the muscle is deepest as well. So if it's really painful, if it's really unpleasant, just do the sponging. And then if you're okay to make the blade with the fingers, so the blade with the fingers, and you're gliding against the ribs and you're working underneath the shoulder blade, and you're just rotating your palm so the muscle is easy to find. You just, even a small amount of pressure into that space is enough to signal the nervous system in that area and the brain just to let go of the tension that's in that place. Okay, one noisy cat coming in. So once you've done that, then you would look at your deltoids, which is where you think you've got the pain. So your deltoids, you've got one at the front, one at the side, one at the back. So you've got triggers at the front, you've got triggers in the middle, triggers at the back. People quite often point to here and say it hurts here. And that's because all those muscles are really, you know, that's where the point goes to, the pain goes to. But the trigger points in the deltoids are very rarely the cause. They're usually just the satellites. So you could sponge the shoulder because we haven't got a lot of time. The triggers at the front, if you want to use it with the ball in the sock, triggers, there's 4 triggers through here, and there's 1 trigger at the back, 1 trigger at the front. So you can feel the one at the front, you can feel the one at the back. You put the ball in the sock and you could roll out the shoulders. Or quick fix is to sponge the shoulder. Sponging increases circulation and lymphatic drainage, but it also signals through the fascial system, the nervous system, to look at this area and to let go of tension. Sponging. So that's our hour. I had to really speed up. It's a very complex subject. There's 25 muscles that you could look at that could all be part of the story. But if you can remember the acronym SITS and just work on these muscles regularly, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres major, subscapularis, then you're going to go a long way to keeping your shoulders healthy. And sometimes shoulder pain is coming from the neck, from the scalene. So if you can get good at relaxing scalenes, then you'll become an expert, and hopefully you'll be able to deal with things before they turn into something chronic.